the alleged hijackers, or they allegedly came over the border from Canada.
Could it be jet fuel?
The general safe speed for an airliner at cruise altitudes is between 391 and 426 miles per hour.
I mean, we are a terrorist haven, but that's for another episode.
Welcome to the Goat Show, the show where we celebrate and debate all things great. My name is ZiLLY. I am joined by my two co-hosts, Fresh and Deezy. Gentlemen, how you doing today? Good to see you on this very special episode, special edition episode, the 9/11 episode. As we're recording this earlier, but probably when you're seeing it is coming out on September 11th, 2024. So we felt like we should record a very special episode specifically about this topic because it is an event that I wouldn't say not so great, but it is an event that had great impact on our world, and we're feeling the reverberations from it to this day. So we felt it's an important thing to talk about. And in having this conversation, we wanted to bring on a very special guest, a good friend of the show. He's been on before. We interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, so we'll put that in the show notes if you haven't seen it yet. But none other than Joshua Clements. Welcome, good sir. Good to see you on the show. Appreciate you being here. And the reason I wanted to bring Josh on was because he's one of the people in my life that I believe has a lot of knowledge about various aspects and angles of this event, both before and after. Similar to Deezy. Deezy is also, I know you're very well versed, Deezy, in a lot of this knowledge and Fresh as well. I'm probably the person who's, I've dabbled, I know a couple of things, so I'll probably be the person that's going to be asking the most questions and trying to get the most understanding of things. But I'm glad you're all here. This is a heavy topic for a lot of people. I still have a lot of feelings about it. So we'll get to that in a second. But I just want to remind everybody who's maybe listening or watching out there, if you're seeing us, if you like the content today, if you hate the content today, do the same thing we always ask you to do. Like, subscribe, comment in whatever way you desire. We've taken it away. We don't even need you to comment in an intelligent way anymore. We don't need you to comment in an entertaining way anymore. If you just want to just talk hate, be our guest. All right. I'm not going to limit you. Okay. Because the thing we're trying to preserve, Josh, is the freedom to express ourselves as we see fit and not get swept up in hysteria like what happened after 9/11. But anyway, with that, we will begin our discussion about 9/11. The first thing I want to talk about and ask you guys is, and I'll probably start with you, Josh, first. What is your memory of that day? Where were you when 9/11 happened?
Well, I think like most millennials, especially if you're on the West Coast, you kind of woke up early that morning. All the events had almost all transpired already on the East Coast. So when people were waking up and seeing everything, most of the stuff had already happened. So I remember I woke up that morning, came out in the living room. My mom always watched the news every single morning, and that morning she was saying like some crazy event that's happening out in New York, and we just kind of watched it together. And I think that even George W. Bush at one point said like he's all, "Oh, I thought it was pilot error or something like that." And so, I mean, it was kind of confusing, like what was going on over there. Didn't really understand the full implications of what was happening, and it wasn't even at that point kind of known as a terrorist attack. It was just like some kind of crazy accident or something wild was going on in New York. And I remember I went to school, and we just sat in class all day in class. Every single class I went into, we had the TV on. We're watching everything that was transpiring, the Pentagon, everything else happened, and so that whole day was just dedicated. Some kids went home from school. Yeah, so it was just kind of like it was just chaos. I think nobody knew what was happening, and it was sort of like when JFK was assassinated. I heard stories that people thought, oh, it's the Cubans that are attacking. They're about to invade, and nobody knew what was going to happen after 9/11. They're like, are there more planes? Like, are there bombs and explode every building? Is the Statue of Liberty okay? Is the Golden Gate Bridge okay? Is every people were freaking out. Nobody knew what to expect next. So that whole day, everybody was pretty much on edge. But I remember I just thought it was so bizarre from the beginning. I didn't really understand it at first, and then immediately after that, even when I was still in high school, I was already researching it, and I was already skeptical of the main story.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely it I can't underscore how significant a change. I mean, America was one place before that event, almost like a paradise in hindsight, in my opinion. But and after it, it became a totally different world. I mean, it was a true pivotal moment, I think, in American history that really changed things. Did you have a similar experience, Deezy? What was your experience on 9/11?
Well, I was born in '95, so I was only like 6 years old. I remember coming down the stairs, similar to Josh's story, and I just came down the stairs. And my mom had the news on. She was just like standing there saying, "Oh my god," like over and over again. And honestly, I don't remember if I went to school or not that day. I just remember watching the footage on the news. I remember seeing like the towers smoking before they fell, and then like why I was awake watching it because we woke up pretty early, so I was awake watching it as it fell. Like I was awake with my mom watching it on the news. So it was a pretty crazy time.
I'm kind of curious, seeing it at that young an age, what kind of did it have a deep impact on you in terms of was it traumatic or was it, how did you feel about it? Or did it not really register at that time?
Honestly, I didn't really have too many like intricate thoughts about it, but as I got older, definitely became a topic of interest because it was something that I didn't personally firsthand witness it, but I saw it and I was alive for it to happen. And as you dig into it a little more, you just start finding a lot of inconsistencies, and so that's why it's always been a topic of interest. Um, but no, I don't think that at the time when it happened, it had a super profound implication to me. I think I was too young. Only was a couple years after that I had to realize, what actually happened.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, because for probably, um, you know, I know for people like mine and Josh's age, it was a real it was traumatic to this day. It really felt like America was, and we can go into sort of the place of America in a little bit, but America was in a place of dominance to the point where the rest of the world wasn't even really a thing. It was like the rest of the world was, at least in my opinion, was like a place to just visit. There wasn't any sense of like imminent danger of any kind or alarm. And so when it happened, I felt like it was just like, whoa, like it was a true, it broke, it just broke, fractured my brain. I think a lot of people, the psyche of America, I think. But I want to, I don't know. Did you have the same, fresh? Were you in Canada at that time, right? What was that for you?
For me, it was well, I took the day off school. I skipped school. I was like, I'm staying home. I don't feel well, so I slept in, and it was my grandmother's birthday. So I woke up. It was like 11:30. Like, oh, I'm gonna see what's on TV, then call my grandmother, and then I turn on TV and I see the plane hitting the towers, and I'm like, oh, this movie's pretty sick. Let's see what the fuck is going on here. And then I'm like, bro, this is really CNN. Like, you know what I mean? This is actual CNN. This is not whatever. And I think at the moment it didn't hit me, but in the coming years, how everything changed was how it impacted me the most. Like not being able to just walk over to the States if we wanted to.
Right, man. Golly, I didn't even.
I didn't even think about that. I grew up in San Diego, and we used to just go across the border all the time when I was a kid. We'd go to Tijuana, just fucking drive across, drive back, no passport, just an ID.
Under 16 didn't even have an ID. Like I'd go with my mom, and my mom would use her health card, and I didn't even have anything, and we'd cross.
Yeah,
And my mom's health card at the time didn't even have a picture on it. It was a white card with a red stripe with her name and a number.
The alleged hijackers, or they allegedly came over the border from Canada.
Mm,
I mean, we are a terrorist haven, but that's for another episode.
Nah, but that did switch up the whole paradigm, right? What ZiLLY's talking about is a paradigm shift. And you have to think about the world in the 1990s. This is a post Cold War era. Like the Soviet Union was no more, and it was only the United States, and everybody was dancing to Britney Spears and Limp Bizkit and having a good time, playing Pogs. Like just chilling. And next thing you know, yeah,
Concerts were getting canceled. People weren't willing to fly. Uh, Security was heightened, so they couldn't even get in. Like, we didn't have a big issue with, oh, you're a felon, you can't perform in Canada until after 9/11, right? That before it didn't matter. You were a felon, okay, cool, but like we're kind of the same country. Like we're brothers, you know what I mean? And I feel like 9/11 really set the border up. It really said like we're not brothers. We are definitely separate entities. We don't exist together.
well, it transcends beyond that, right? It's the Patriot Act and everything else. This hyper surveillance state of everything you have to do. Even in during World War One, before then, there were no passports whatsoever. And Russia, I think, was like the first country to introduce passports, and the world looked at them like, oh wow, you guys are like really intense about all this traveling and stuff like that. So that's all the way back then. There's no passports then, and then all of a sudden you need a passport to go to Canada back and forth. All of a sudden that all changed. So yeah, changed the world.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely get into a lot of the legacy of 9/11. That's a huge one. I mean, the security state and all that stuff. Um, you know, I do want to make sure though that sort of just my personal recollection of all this. I was in college. I was in Boston. Shout out BU. Um, and I remember going to the main lecture hall for a class that morning, and the teacher came in and said, "Hey," people were whispering, but me and my buddy didn't really know what was going on. And then the teacher came in and said, "Hey, there's a building's been hit in New York by a 747, and there's a lot of people at BU that are from New York. So a lot of the kids in my class were from New York, so they left to go watch it at this food hall that had TV screens everywhere. So we just skipped the class and went in. And at that time, there was just the one building. So I remember seeing the second one hit live, and that's where it was like, I mean, you could audibly hear the entire room go like freak out completely. And then at that point, we just kept watching, and then I remember watching both towers collapse, uh, and that was, I mean, it was unbelievable. Like you said, Fresh, it felt like a Jerry Bruckheimer movie. Before that point, it was like that's a Jerry Bruckheimer movie. It's a disaster movie of some kind. To see it in real life was yeah, stunning. And yeah, the America was this. It's so hard to describe, man. It was like
It was free. It was truly free. Like, I think that freedom died on September 11th. I'm telling you, because again, we used to go for rides into Buffalo just to visit stores that we didn't have here. We don't do that anymore because the hassle is not worth it. It used to be just 5 minutes. You wait in the line until they pull up and you're like, hey, yeah, I'm going to Buffalo. All right, bye. Gone. You know what I mean? Like, they'd stop you, but just to make sure you're not sitting there with a gun on your lap or whatever. But if it was in the trunk, it was fine.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think for me there was another aspect to it, which was that my dad was a big, Seventh-day Adventist Christian type. So there had always been talk of revelations and he, Nostradamus and a big part of that before 9/11 was, there's going to be some event in New York. And we always thought it'd be something nuclear or something. And it's going to change the world. I think Nostradamus said fire in the sky or something like that. So I was raised with that. So when it happened, that was another level of like, whoa, are we entering some sort of new dimension here? And to be honest with you, up to today, I think we have. I mean, I think Dr. Thomas was right.
Look, fuck, what movie? Oh, in The Matrix. The Matrix says that 1999 was peak civilization, peak humanity, the best year. At the time, everyone's like, yeah, sure, it's just going to get better. In 2024, I'm going to tell you, the AI in The Matrix had it right. The greatest year for us, I think, was 99. I think 2000 on, it started going down. And 2001 was the catalyst.
You know that Neo's birthday is 9/11, right? In the
Yep.
movie.
Get out of here.
Yeah,
Yep.
if you look, yeah, when they bring up his file, if you pause it in the movie, It says he was born on 9/11, 1970, whatever it is.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So I mean, we're
Well,
talking
with
about
that,
predictive program. Talking about Jerry Bruckheimer movie. We're talking about predictive programming and all that other
yeah.
kind of stuff. I mean, like this shit goes really deep beyond. Like I always, whenever I start talking about it, I'm always like, okay, well, what do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about like the political implications? Do you want to talk about the physics of that day? Do you want to talk about the true psychological operation, which is really what it was? You know, how deep do you want to go with this kind of stuff? We can talk about the physics. We can talk about insider trading. We can talk about all these different aspects, angles of the event. You know.
Well, let's talk about it all. So, what Josh? Let me ask you. So, 9/11 happens. This is at least my recollection. 9/11 happens. The world, but the U.S. It was hard to describe how eerie and just terrifying. I think that's the other thing. I don't know if people who are younger can really understand. It was fucking terrifying. Like we were living in a world where America was just it was peace. It was Pax Americana, as far as I'm concerned. Although it's not really true when you look at deep in, but in terms of the illusion we were presented in the United States on the news, whatever, we were worrying about things like, you know, come spots on Monica Lewinsky's dress. You know what I'm saying? We weren't thinking about, oh shit, there's people who are going to come in here and commit mass terror. I think the closest thing to it would have been Oklahoma City before that, I think in 96.
There was the World Trade Center bombing in '93 too.
Oh, right.
Let's not
Yeah,
forget about
Desert
that.
Storm and shit, right?
Right.
Yeah, well,
Right.
but the World Trade Center was bombed in 1993.
Yeah.
By
Yeah, that's what caused Desert Storm, right?
no, Desert Storm was caused over slant drilling that Saddam Hussein was slant drilling in Kuwait and stuff like that. So they came in and said, "Oh, we're going to protect the Kurds," and he's gassing his own people and all that
But
kind of
what
shit.
about the
So you know,
Kurds?
yeah. What about think about the Kurds? Let's go back a little bit further because Saddam Hussein did put a hit on George H.W. Bush, which is George W. Bush's father, right? So they already had a grudge going back to the '90s. So when this event happened, you know, you want to talk about PNAC and all that other kind of stuff, like that gave him the green light to say, oh, now's our chance to invade Iraq, and all we have to do is say that Saddam Hussein was tied in with 9/11, which he wasn't. So they went in. And
Let's start there then, because when it comes to all the conspiracy stuff, I think something that's important for the context of it is some of the lead up to the event, which was sort of a philosophy, right, of the neocons, which was, I think, outlined in Project for a New American Century. That document is that accurate, Josh?
Yeah, for sure. Like all of the big players, Dick Cheney, Jeb Bush, Donald Rumsfeld, even Bill Kristol, like all those main guys who were involved in all the Iraq propaganda and stuff like that, were all involved in Project for a New American Century, which is called PNAC. These are all the neocons and people who were infiltrated the Republican Party. And so, yeah, so they were in charge during 9/11, you know, during all the events that were happening. If we can get further into that, you know, we can get into like Dick Cheney taking over all of the war games and stuff like that in May of 2001. You know, that power never been given to a vice president before. And of course, there's Operation Vigilant Guardian and all these other, you know, war games that were happening that day. They were literally putting fake radar blips on the maps. So the FAA was trying to figure out which is a hijacked plane and which one isn't, getting entirely confused by these fake blips that have been put on the map. So I mean, yeah, it's like Operation Northern Vigilance is like another one.
I have a feeling what we're going to need to do is in the description for this episode, we're going to put all the links to all the different documents. I think that's definitely something we got to do. Um, I just want to say, so I want to get in all this stuff. We're going to get into it in a second, but I just want to say before we do, um, I just want to offer a toast because we're going to talk about a lot of things today. And I think sometimes what gets lost in the mix is the victims, the actual victims that died that day. I don't recommend people go watch it, but there's, you can see videos of people who literally jumped out of the building because it was burning and they were burning alive, and it's gruesome. And I think on some level, I think people should watch that because it gets lost. You don't really understand just how evil and how, you know, grotesque this attack was,
It really does need to be highlighted that no matter why or how this happened, a lot of people lost their lives that day. So
They did. And a lot of, we talk, I'm not gonna say, feelings about police or whatever, but on that day, there were people that ran into that building and were very brave trying to save lives, and they perished, so I think just we offer a toast to y'all, the victims of 9/11. People died from cancer from the dust. Just want to acknowledge them, and I did visit recently when I was in New York. I visited the 9/11 memorial, and man, it's powerful. Like, I gotta say, they did a fantastic job building that memorial, whoever was responsible for that. And yeah, it brought tears to my eyes. It's pretty powerful.
Like
Symbol.
everything that you're saying, like I could say something about all of these things, like I could tell you about how Steve Buscemi was there and helped during 9/11 during
Oh
the attack.
wow,
Yeah, he ran in
didn't know
there.
that.
I think he's a certified firefighter actually.
Yeah.
And even those 9/11 memorials, I don't know if you remember when Hillary Clinton collapsed during her visit to the 9/11 memorial. That was kind of weird. She passed out for some reason. And then another person just recently climbed into the waterfalls in there. He
Right.
climbed down into the hole and fell into the hole. And if you guys want to get even crazier, I mean, like, I don't know how far we want to go into all of the symbolism and
Let's
the
go all
mass
out,
psyop
all
and
out.
stuff like that. Yeah, for sure. The actual layout of the memorial and where the new One World Trade Center is, it's all laid out like the pyramids in Giza, right? So that they all match up with those same three pyramids.
Wow.
And of course, the new One World Trade Center is two pyramids connected on top of each other, like the
Right.
you know
Right. Right.
symbolism that we're
Yeah.
not supposed to talk about, right?
No, Fresh. Stop it. Stop it. Stop.
So we can
Unless
get we can
they
get
got a
into
check.
that
Unless they
too.
got a
Yeah.
check for us, then we'll stop everything. Just give us the check. We'll do whatever you want. I'm joking. Kinda.
Freemasonry, the towers of Freemasonry, and stuff like that.
The architect of the memorial, his name is Michael Arad. He is an Israeli American architect, and he won the competition to design the memorial in 2004.
I see.
Take them down, put them back up.
Yikes.
Let's get into. I mean, this is all fantastic. So let's. First question, and I'm pretty sure I know what you guys are going to answer. Do you believe the official story of the 9/11 Commission and what happened on that day? Does anybody here believe what was said in that document? Fresh.
I do not fucking believe that garbage.
The 9/11 Commission is a conspiracy theory.
Okay. What's the conspiracy theory?
Oh, well, just everything that they say, that 19 hijackers armed with box cutters took over 4 commercial planes and crashed them into all these sites and everything like that. And like that's what they say happened. They say that, that's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, exactly. That's clearly not what happened.
I mean, well, it's a theory. It's a theory. They don't have like the full proof of all that stuff happening, right? Or at least I've never seen it. They just say that that's what happened.
They've never presented I mean, I think I always wonder about the black boxes and the flight logs and all that. Like,
Didn't the black boxes get destroyed, but only the passport survived?
Yeah, well, see, look, we're even curious about that, right? We don't know definitively if that was a real case. Then we would have already everybody would know that. Everybody would just be like, oh yeah, well we found the black boxes, so everybody knows about it. So like, just look at the Pentagon itself, right? Like, how many times have you seen videos of the planes hitting at the towers? And yet they've never released any footage of the plane hitting the Pentagon, except for those like 5 frames that they released of a security camera that was dated on 9/10/2001.
And even that footage, it looks like a missile approaches from the ground level. It doesn't look like something like a plane comes in at it on an angle. It looks like a missile comes down and like straight at the building.
Yeah, well, the FBI confiscated the security cameras from the Citgo gas station across the street and the Sheridan Hotel, and they said the FBI came in and confiscated all those videos, the traffic cameras that would have shown the plane going into the building. Why not show that if it's just so obvious? You can show the planes hitting the towers over and over again. Why not just show the planes hitting the Pentagon and shut everybody up? You have to talk about it. And there's all kinds of other like sketchy like where's all the debris? Where's the plane debris? Where's the tail section? Where's the wing section from the plane? All that stuff. Like it was all intact. Like when the building was burning, it collapsed in on itself. Even Purdue University actually released a model of the plane going into the Pentagon, but it completely omitted the engines in their model. So it's like these are giant plane engines that or Rolls-Royce engines that are on there, and they just completely didn't show those in their model. And they said, "Oh, the plane just disintegrated on the inside because it was pulverized by all the pillars inside."
Microsoft Flight Simulator pulled down the ability to fly into the buildings in New York with their planes because if you attempted it, the planes would destroy themselves before they reach the building because of the thickness of the atmosphere. Planes can't fly that fast at that altitude. They're not made to do that.
Yeah, the wings would entirely rip off like going that fast at that many G's. So like the atmosphere is kind of like water, right? So when you run on the surface, you can run at a normal pace, but if you're underwater and you're trying to run, you have all of this water pressure pushing up against you. So same thing's going
Right.
on with the air density. So when you go up into higher densities, you can go faster, right? Because the air is thinner. So when you come back down, the air gets stronger. Those G forces get stronger, and it would have ripped the wings right off the plane. So
Wow,
you have
really?
actual pilots. This guy named Russ Wittenberg. He actually flew the planes that were used on 9/11, and he said that Hani Hanyor, the guy who allegedly flew into the Pentagon, Flight 77, he's like that guy's doing like corkscrew stunt pilot maneuvers in order to fly directly into the ground level of the Pentagon. So if you actually watch the flight path of Flight 77, he goes past the Pentagon, does a corkscrew back around, and then comes into the ground level of the Pentagon instead of flying directly on top of the building. Or I mean, what does he
Right.
care? And on top of that, Washington D.C. is a no-fly zone. They have
Right.
supposedly restricted airspace and stuff like that. And I've always heard that the Pentagon had surface-to-air missiles and stuff like that. Like they could have
Yeah.
taken out planes and stuff like that. So this is supposed to be the most secure building in all of Washington D.C. and all of America. Like, and that still happens. So
Yeah, I mean that was the weirdest thing about the Pentagon thing was just like, okay, one, yeah, it was Washington D.C. was a no-fly zone, or at least specifically over the Pentagon for sure. They don't have any cameras at the Pentagon around this. I mean, you're telling me there's no security cameras around the Pentagon that could have seen everything that at that time? I mean, even if they're shitty cameras for 19, whatever, 2001. I'm just saying like there were surveillance cameras at that time. It's not like there weren't surveillance cameras. And you're telling me the Pentagon didn't have any? You had to get it from a gas station or like some. It's super super weird. And then yeah,
where's the video of all of the hijackers in the actual airport? They could have been at the concession stand, or they could have been waiting for the flight, or they could have been. They show them coming in through the Portland airport because a lot of people don't know this. That the hijackers allegedly they stayed at a hotel in Portland, Maine, the night before they flew to Logan International in Boston, and they left out of Logan International. So they stayed at that hotel, and some documentarian, went to the hotel where they stayed and tried to interview the staff, and they said that they had a hush agreement from the FBI not to discuss any of the details of what they saw with anybody. So even then, the actual footage they show of them in the airports is not really them. And the date is also wrong. It says September 10th, 2001, same as the Pentagon, right? September 10th. So that the dates are off on the actual footage that they show of the alleged hijackers and of this plane allegedly hitting the Pentagon.
well let's talk about the hijackers because for me one of the biggest things with 9/11 conspiracy stuff there's about 4 or 5 things I think if I think off the top of my head where I'm like what the hell. One of the first things is that these hijackers, I mean, there's a question of who they are, Saudis or Mossad or something like that. And we can talk about that in a second. But the thing that I always found weird is like these were not pilots, like crack pilots that were badass pilots from somewhere and they knew how to pull fancy maneuvers and all this stuff. From my understanding, they had like Cessna experience and not much.
I didn't even think it was Cessna experience. I thought it was simulation experience.
Well, they even said they said like I was surprised he even could drive a car. Surprised he had a driver's license, like Hani Hanyor. They said he could barely even operate a Cessna. Hani Hanyor, who's flew Flight 77, he already had a pilot's license from Arizona, and he was trying to get licensed in Florida to try to fly these airplanes. And the guy said, "Okay, well, you have to go up and have a certain amount of nautical miles in order to rent one of our Cessnas." And so he was in the process of doing that by the time 9/11 happened. And so he had gone there, and they said he could barely even fly that Cessna plane. So flying a Cessna compared to flying a 767, your training is going to completely confuse you when you're inside the cockpit because the toggles and the all of the buttons and everything else is all completely different from a Cessna to an actual commercial airliner. So the idea that they were able to do these kind of maneuvers and this type of flying is just completely irrational. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I know personally, I've watched very seasoned pilots again with the Microsoft Flight Simulator not be able to thread the needle, not be able to make it happen, even at slower speeds, even at whatever, not be able to make it happen. So
I was just talking to Chat GPT over here while you guys were chatting, and the the general safe speed for an airliner at cruise altitudes is between 391 and 426 miles per hour, and that's calculated at higher altitudes. Low altitudes create higher stress on the frame. Uh, Speeds of 400 plus knots or 460 miles per hour would experience, potentially structural failure. Then I asked, how fast were the planes flying when they hit the towers in 9/11? And American Airlines Flight 11 was going 466. United Airlines flight was going 590 miles per hour.
so again, you're gonna tell me people that could barely fly a Cessna took these planes that cannot really handle these types of conditions, put them through them on the first shot, and threaded that fucking needle. Bro, to me, that's crazy. Now, if you told me though, however, that some like black ops secret service motherfucker that flies like fighter jets did it, I might believe you. I might believe you.
Well, all of the pilots that were on the 9/11 planes, they were all ex-military people, so Air Force and what have you. And one of the guys was actually involved in a simulation of a plane hitting the Pentagon. So he was ex government, federal government, worked at the Pentagon and did simulations on this. But more so like on the actual identities of these alleged hijackers. First of all, after that happened, BBC and a bunch of other people reported that these guys said they were still alive. They said that they were cases of stolen identity and things like that. And so, but even bigger was this guy named Davin Coburn, who was a part of Popular Mechanics. And Popular Mechanics is like the biggest like anti-truther people. Like they try to debunk everything that they can. They have special access to all these documents and shit. And he went on the Charles Goyette show. I don't know if you know Charles Goyette from the old Ron Paul days, but he was a radio guy from Arizona. And Charles Goyette had Davin Coburn on there trying to debunk all of these 9/11 conspiracy theories and shit. He opened up the lines to people to call in, and this guy calls in and he goes, "How did you find the DNA of the alleged hijackers? What DNA did you have initially to test it up against to make sure that it was those people?" And he just blanked them. He just couldn't say. He's like, I don't know, I don't know. He's like, I'll get back to you on that. I'm like, oh shit, that's it. He didn't have the answers. And even more so, if you want to talk about DNA, a lot of people don't know this. 46% of the DNA from the World Trade Center and from 9/11 have not been identified. 46%. That's almost half of the people who allegedly died in 9/11 are still considered missing. They don't even know where they are or what happened to them. So, did they just disintegrate and turn into dust and fly away, or like what happened? Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if like, because we're gonna like talk about a wide range of things, and of course, we talked about Ryan Dawson earlier, but he's big on he made a documentary called War by Deception, and he kind of goes over all of the legal stuff and the implications of Mossad and Saudi and all these other people who are implicated in this, and he's really on point. But he does something what he calls 9/11 truth for grown-ups, and so he says that everybody else is a kook. If you're a kook, if you believe missile, or if you believe controlled demolition, or if you believe in nukes, or especially somebody like Dr. Judy Wood, who is somebody super important to this. She wrote a book called Where Did the Towers Go? And she basically gives the evidence that these buildings turned into dust. Like they were vaporized. They didn't explode. There wasn't explosives in the building or anything like that. They're using a form of new technology called antimatter. And this is like Nikola Tesla stuff. This is like, like this is what I kind of believe that we're on the verge of some kind of new free energy or new like antimatter technology that they're going to introduce to the public, kind of like they do with the internet. It all comes out of nowhere. Like this is what the same thing they did with the nuclear bomb, right? They had the Manhattan Project. They were working all this time, and then they release it and show it to the world.
So, Josh, have you ever seen there was a video, uh, I guess I would say 10 years ago, maybe more now. It was a Russian engineer or scientist, and he was talking about how it was a antimatter bomb, and it was built underneath the towers prior to them being put in. And he shows all the science, and for the life of me, I cannot find this video no matter what I fucking do. But that explanation to me is the most likely. He shows that the military already had this tech, that um, other buildings, 3 in Chicago and like whatever, also have these. They're called like demolition something. Like they're meant for being used as a controlled demolition.
Yeah, back in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan had what was called Star Wars, which like sounds like the movie, but they had an operation called Star Wars, which they were trying to put space weapons into outer space to prevent some kind of Soviet attack or something like that. So they have been working on these high tech weapons for a very long time. And Dr. Judy Wood, she basically shows that like uh, the most glaring piece of evidence is the lack of seismic activity. So when there's a normal destruction of a building, there's a giant ripple effect or an earthquake. We can see the seismic waves of all of this debris hitting the ground. And if you have 110-story buildings that collapse and are falling down into the ground, it should have been raining dump trucks, right? It should have been so much damage to all the other buildings, surrounding buildings, and everything else around them. But she shows that the seismic activity is basically like a flat line and shows that it all went up into smoke. If you guys remember, after 9/11, all of lower Manhattan was just covered in dust. There's a giant plume of smoke trailing off of the island. So all of that whole building was just vaporized. It was turned into dust. Even building 7 and everything else, right? It all just kind of fell down and vaporized into itself. So it's really bizarre physics that were going on that day. Like, and
I've never that's fascinating. I've never heard that. That's crazy.
yeah, well, but it also goes to show, like, because they say, like, oh, well, if you're going to do dynamite and stuff like that, it takes a long time for you to strap all that stuff to the building and everything. And you can't have any cell phones or any electrical charges because that could detonate and spark the dynamite and stuff. But then you can go into like Mossad and Gelatin and B Team and all these other people who were allegedly in there. They took out the bomb sniffing dogs weeks before 9/11 happened. So I don't know what happened. I mean, like anybody else, the more I study it, the more questions I have. So I don't really know what to believe. Was it a nuke, like Fresh was saying? Was it antimatter? Was it just general explosives? Because they had tried to bomb it in '93, like I said. Like they had already tried to do this, and of course, when the Mossad agents were pulled over in New Jersey, they had a whole truck full of explosives, and they said that they used those vans and they brought those into the building and stuff like that and tried to explode the building from the ground up. They cut out the bottom first, and then the whole building comes down after that.
For me, it definitely does not feel the for I don't know how to say this. It might be in bad taste, but the presentation of this event was key. It wasn't just that these buildings collapsed or they blew up. There was a presentation. There was a timing to it. It was you're seeing a prolonged fire occurring, and then all of a sudden you're seeing this collapse. It was there's a presentation of these things. But I know for me personally, if it's not one of these new technologies that could have done it, I just always thought it was weird, like you're saying, Fresh, with the precision at which these planes hit these buildings. For me, it always felt like there were maybe it was because we had drone technology, I'm sure, in the military at that point. So if there's any sort of explanation of how these planes could be guided in, I could see it being like autopilot or something like that. If it's more of like, just a straight up, yeah, the plane was there. Although now that we're talking about all this, all this other stuff, I'm starting to really doubt that.
Like you might make it on a straight shot, maybe, right? And I guess the point is that it's a suicide bomb attempt. So if it doesn't work, then whatever. My problem is I don't know if they knew how to use those planes well enough to do that, man. Because I don't think they could have done that in a Cessna.
Well, they already had during Operation Northwoods. I'm sure you guys are kind of familiar with this. So this is 1962. They had Operation Northwoods where they were going to fake crash land these planes and blame it on Cuba and try to start another Bay of Pigs kind of situation. But they had already had drones back in the 1960s, and I'm sure that that was some kind of prototype bullshit that they had back then. And it got way more sophisticated up into the 90s, and up until the late 90s, they had already had drones. But the most glaring thing, if you want to check that out, is that both of the flight paths from the planes that leave from Logan Airport, they both fly over Stewart Air Force Base. So if you look at their trajectory, both of the planes cross over the exact spot of Stewart Air Force Base, which is in upstate New York. So if you go and you look at, if you just Google like 9/11 flight paths, you'll see that two of them crisscross over one spot in upstate New York, and that's an Air Force base up there. And so people allege that if they were going to, fly it out of anywhere, maybe it was there. Maybe they had the plane stop there, and then they switched them out with cargo ships and stuff like that, and cargo planes, and they flew them into the towers from there.
Well, how does that? Okay, so I can see the argument against that being like, well, there are people on these planes. Where'd they go? What's the theories behind that? I mean, did
Well, okay, so a lot of people allege that in Flight 93, because it flew out to Cleveland first, and they unloaded those passengers there from Cleveland, and they put mock victims. They staged mock victims that are on there. They just said that they were on there, but you can't go through the autopsies and check everything. And like I said, 46% of that DNA is still missing. So they could just say, "Oh, those people were on the plane and they're gone now," and they could have just been changed identity and said like, "Oh, they were on there and they were just a double agent or something like that." Like,
Well, and also how many people didn't exist? They can make up people.
yeah, AI people and stuff like that. I mean, like that's not that insane to make. And then all of the calls that happened on the planes, right? That's another big glaring thing, right? Like, okay, so after 9/11, AT&T spent billions of dollars trying to put this technology onto airplanes so people could make cell phone calls from the airplanes. Why would they need to do that if it could all exist when 9/11 happened? And so people were calling from those airphones. Those airphones sucked. That's why they got rid of them, right? Because they would always drop the calls and stuff because the plane is flying too fast. If you're trying to make a call from a cell phones use something called triangulation, right? And so that means that your phone is kind of Tarzaning, like leapfrogging from one tower to the next. And in order to do that, the plane's flying too fast for you to be able to make a stabilized call for that long. And even a company out in Japan, they even experimented with that and try to make all these cell phone calls from up in an airplane. And they said they dropped the calls as soon as they got up higher in the atmosphere. And yet, I'm told that a woman named Cece Lyles made a phone call to her husband and said, "Oh, babe, I'm on the plane," and she's like Betty Ong is another person. She also made calls and saying like, "Oh, someone's been stabbed in business class." She's like super calm. There's no like airplane sounds around her. Nobody's screaming or yelling or anything like that. There's no kind of commotion going on, and she's saying, "Oh yeah, I guess somebody's been stabbed in first class, and I guess like we're going down or something." Like she's super calm about everything, and it's just really questionable like phone calls and stuff like that. So, and that's what they present as evidence, and yet we're supposed to just be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, like that makes sense to me." Yeah, they should have built the buildings out of passports, and they would have all survived. But yeah. Well, Bernard Carrick. Bernard Carrick was the police commissioner, NYPD police commissioner, right? He was Giuliani's handler that whole day. So anytime you see Giuliani on 9/11, Bernard Carrick is right next to him. He's the bald guy with the mustache and everything like that. So he's the one when they found the Mossad agents in New Jersey, they brought him back to New York, right? And they had him in holding in New York. Bernard Carrick is a convicted felon. He was convicted of bribery from a man named Eitan Wertheimer, who was one of the biggest billionaires from Israel. And he was the one who gave him all the money, and then those Mossad agents were released and sent back to Israel instead of being questioned for their involvement with 9/11.
and just to and I want to slow down a little bit just because I don't know if people know these theories that are going to be watching, but there was from my understanding, there was a group of Israeli Mossad agents that were where were they stationed? Somewhere in New York.
They were in New Jersey, across the bridge in New Jersey, dancing. Right?
Basically, from my understanding, the towers are hit, all the chaos is happening, There's a Chinese woman, I think. It's pretty funny. There's an interview with her where she notices a group of people cheering on the towers being attacked, and she calls, I think, I don't know if she calls local police or FBI or whatever. They show up, and it turns out this is a group of Israelis who turn out to be Mossad agents, and they get flown out, right? Is that that's the story?
Well, they get locked up first.
Yeah, so they were here on student visas, and they were Israeli art students, and they were working with somebody called the Lower Manhattan Cultural Center, and they were based out of there, and they had been given access to the World Trade Center in order to do some kind of art installation that they did up on up on the 93rd floor.
All right, Josh. I want to raise a toast. I want to raise a toast, Josh. I want to raise a toast to the intelligence community's support of the arts for many years now. So toast to you guys for supporting art, from designers and artists to you. Thank you so much for your support and your patronage. Sorry, continue, Josh.
Yeah, so they were involved in a project called Gelatin. It's called the Bee Thing, is what they called it. And they had actually been able to remove windows from the upper floors, actually from the 93rd floor, which is where the planes literally hit the building. And there's photos of this. You can look it up. You can look it up. B Team, and they were able to turn on all of the lights and make the lights say B Team on the side of the building. And you can see that's the exact point where those planes actually hit. Another one of those coincidences, of course. And of course, Marvin Bush, who is George W. Bush's brother, was the main guy leading security at the World Trade Center. And of course, Kroll Securities, where Nick Kroll, the famous comedian. Yeah, his father was in charge of all the security too. So another like kind of weird thing going on there.
I want to bring, because Deezy, you mentioned this before when we were talking before the show about the insurance, right, on the building, and I think it was owned by Larry Silverstein. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So in July 2001, Larry Silverstein signed a 99-year lease for the World Trade Center. The deal valued at $3.2 billion, including the Twin Towers and some surrounding buildings as well. And as part of the agreement, obviously, he had to have insurance. And the insurance policy covered terrorist attacks, seeing as the World Trade Center was a high-profile target for terrorist attacks. It had been bombed before, so that's fair to say. The insurance policy was worth about $3.55 billion, enough to cover the lease and damage to surrounding buildings. When the attack happened, Silverstein obviously filed insurance claim to cover losses. And when he did, he claimed that it wasn't a single event. It was two separate occurrences, and he should be entitled to double the insurance payout at $7.1 billion. Well, they go and they have a battle, and after everything, he was awarded $4.55 billion. So he paid $3.2 billion for this deal. It was valued at 3.2, and then he was paid $4.55 billion for both of these attacks as a claim on insurance, which is...
Yeah, but homie never upped the fucking 3.2. When he bought it, he didn't up the money. Like, he bought that shit under contract, but when he fucking claimed his insurance, I better believe that money was in his account.
Well, he claimed that it was two separate occurrences, so he filed two separate insurance claims for the towers. So each valued at $3.5 billion, which is insane. And he...
if you believe their story, it was two occurrences.
I mean, fair enough. I guess to play devil's advocate, though, with that story, there's layers to it, right? I mean, it's the timing of getting the insurance, is my understanding, that it was like, what, 2 months in advance. The other part of it is that, and I remember seeing, none other than, 45 on a newscast at that time saying, hey, those buildings were designed in a way where it would withstand hurricanes and any kind of, major weather and things like that.
Wasn't it a tenth the heat of the sun or some crazy shit was the claim?
Watch this, gentlemen.
Pancake theory. according to which the fires, while not melting the steel, heated it up sufficiently to cause the floors weakened by the airplane strikes to break loose from the steel columns, and this started a chain reaction.
So you would expect then from that theory, which is the official theory, to see a whole stack of floors piled up on top of each other and then a spindle of core columns standing too.
The core of each of the twin towers consisted of 47 massive steel columns. If the floors had broken loose from them, these columns would have still been sticking up into the air 1,000 feet.
The plane did not cut all those core columns.
We designed the buildings to take the impact of the Boeing 707 hitting the building at any location.
The building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners.
That the plane flew straight into the building.
Straight through him, right. Yeah.
So you're saying that the building was actually designed to cope with a hole like that and still survive?
Yeah, it was.
If you had dropped, say, a billiard ball from the top of the World Trade Center, 110 floors up there, it would have taken 8 to 10 seconds to hit the ground, encountering no resistance whatsoever.
The Twin Towers came down in nearly free fall speed. 200,000 tons of steel shatters and explodes outwards over 500 feet.
This means that floors shattered at an average rate of about 10 floors per second.
There is no scenario for a pancake effect of buildings falling that allows them to fall at the rate of free fall.
Now what can do that? What can move mass out of the way? Explosives. 47 huge steel columns going up the core. They're interconnected. How do you get them to fail simultaneously so the core disappears? It looks like those core columns were cut.
The way we do this is by cutting the beam at an angle.
Okay, so can we pause it here real quick, Deezy? I want to bring. Okay, so what about the thermite theory? They took my understanding is that very quickly after this happened, they got rid of all the evidence of the buildings. They literally, wrapped that shit up and got it out of there. And I don't know what happened to all that. I mean, what
they moved it to something called the Fresh Kills Landfill. That's a real name, Fresh Kills Landfill. And the debris that was taken from that site was actually used to pave the streets of Lower Manhattan, meaning that the human remains from 9/11 were used to pave the streets of Manhattan. You can look this up. It's on Reuters. I'm not making this up. Like, it's one of the most craziest things that Giuliani is guilty of.
Yo, I just watched something that said the fires weren't put out until December. The fires from 9/11 weren't put out until December, bro. Like, what? What burns like that? Thermite.
To play devil's advocate, could it be jet fuel? Is that a possibility?
No, jet fuel burns up quick. Think about gasoline, bro.
I was just saying that, when the planes actually hit the impact, it spit all the fuel out in a giant fireball. So that's why when you see the plane hit, it spits out in a giant fireball, right? So all that jet fuel was gone already, and it's only kerosene. It would have burned up right away. But like Fresh was saying, there was still evidence of molten steel underneath the World Trade Center rubble, and there was instances of they were saying, "Oh, we need more steel toe boots for the workers that are working there because the floor is melting their boots." Like, that was that hot. They're saying that they're up to levels of 2,000 degrees. Like, that's insane. Like, there's no way.
So again, nuke, antimatter.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Objectively, that can't be a plane that has that. Like a plane blowing up with jet fuel can't cause.
Listen, that kind of this video should explain it. Right? Okay. This is good. This is all relevant.
The concept of molten iron is very important here. In order to get molten iron, you have to reach unbelievable heat levels. It takes much, much more energy than you could find with any combination of burning office furniture, jet fuel, or gravity. Molten iron can be an indication of the use of thermite. Thermite, thermate, and nanothermite are super hot burning substances used by the military that can cut through steel. It can supply its own oxygen so it can burn underwater. It would explain how fires burned at ground zero for 3 months even after the area was flooded.
So thermite would also explain potentially the fact that the fires could not be put out at ground zero. The fires lasted for quite a while.
The fires were finally put out on December 13th, 2001, just over 3 months after 9/11, making it the longest burning building fire in recorded history. They burned underwater for much of that time. These fires were a big question mark. But first, it was time to take a closer look at NIST. They are the scientific agency backing the official version of events as most Americans know them. I was hoping they would curb my growing anxiety. Instead, what I learned about NIST made my heart sink. To understand NIST, you need to understand the relationship to explosives. They have vehemently denied that there were any. Not only did they not check for them, they state that none were used. Plain and
Wait, what? How can you not check for them and then know definitively they weren't used?
Right.
That makes no fucking sense. Also, then what the fuck are you doing there?
Right.
Why are you there? You're here if there's if there's explosives. So what the fuck are you doing here then?
Right. Right. Okay. This is all fascinating, and we could deep dive, but I want to make sure that we cover a few other things about this whole event that that I always well first I want to get your just one last thing on the planes hitting the buildings. Okay, a lot of people believe they were holograms. There's just there's a contingent of people that believe they're holograms. Do you guys feel that that it was some kind of holographic projection? Me personally, I don't believe it because there were enough people that I knew that were living in New York who saw with their own eyes that I have to. I mean, maybe you can be fooled by a hologram, but I have to believe that they were able to see something that really was there. It was broad daylight, you know.
Okay, so I'm of two minds, and this is one of the things about 9/11 that I struggle with is that I've seen the video where you see the plane come out to the other side, like you see the nose come out of the other. That would not happen. You see the video of how World Trade Centers are made, right? So the plane is not making it inside. Even if it cracks the fucking whatever and it makes it's not making it inside. It's not. That steel is not gonna fucking blow a hole. So how did it pass through the other side? That was stuff they were showing. However, it can just be edited video. It doesn't have to be a hologram. And I don't know what hit it.
There's only one video of uh, Flight 11 hitting the first tower, right? Which is the Nade brothers video. And that's the only footage that people have ever seen of that plane ever hitting that building. And there is also something called Project Bluebeam. This is a real thing. And also, I don't know if you guys ever seen this in Japan and in Korea. I think they have advertisements of like a giant cat or like a giant dragon that looks almost like it's real. Yeah, like it's almost real. Like totally, yeah, yeah. So that technology exists right now. I'm of the belief that the government withholds technology from us. I don't think that that's that controversial to say that they have technologies that they release to the public and they finally show us and expose to us. So who's to say that they could not have used some type of Project Bluebeam or some type of hologram, technology to make it look like a plane hit it and then just use explosions in the building of traditional, dynamite and things like that. So that it is possible. It is possible. I don't necessarily believe that, but it totally is possible. Like I wouldn't put it past them. Is what I'm saying. I believe that it was they were drones or remote controlled type of military cargo planes. That's my belief that they used that type of technology. I don't believe anybody was on board. I just believe that they were just empty planes that they used as a proxy, basically, to make it look like that happened. And then they fill in the blanks later. They do the event and then they say, oh, it was this guy and he was here and he did this and all this other shit. And of course, this dude named Abdul Sattar Sheikh he was an FBI informant, and he was the guy renting apartments to the alleged hijackers. He helped them get bank accounts and stuff like that. This all took place in San Diego, and he's the same guy who rented the building for the Heaven's Gate cult. Same guy involved with 9/11. Yeah, I mean, like every time I hear like these kind of coincidences, I'm like, oh, it's another like bizarre thing that they're doing. And also, they said that they were yeah they were being funded by a bank called the Riggs Bank. You can look this up on it's on Wikipedia, whatever. It's called the
Come on,
Riggs
yeah.
Bank,
Okay.
and it was and they were
Tony the Riggs Bank.
that's what they call it, RIGGS, and that they were getting money provided to them from a man named Bandar Bush. That's not his real last name, but he was so close with the Bush family that they called him Bandar Bush, and he was
Oh my God. Bandar Bush.
he was the ambassador to Saudi Arabia during 9/11, and his wife opened up bank accounts and was flowing money to the alleged hijackers and stuff like that. So
And even trying to hide this stuff, man.
that's what I mean. People say like, "Oh, well, if they really did it, how did they get away with it?" I'm like, they did it. It's all right there. Like all you got to do is just like look it up and read it. It's like right there.
They got away with it because they control the people who would arrest them. But we fucking know, bro. Like, we see you motherfuckers.
I mean, this had well, and not to go on a tangent, but I also think that that's why it's much harder to get away with this now with cell phones everywhere. Somebody's got an angle. Somebody's seeing something. I mean, even that Trump assassination. Well, we won't get into that. But I'm just saying. My hope is that with all these cell phones and all this internet and social media and stuff, that people can immediately get 20 different angles of the same thing. But whatever. I did want to bring up. I think that the final thing. This is a big one for me. And there's a lot going on here. I know you know a lot about it, Josh, and probably you, Deezy, is Building 7, WTC 7. To this day, it doesn't make any sense to me why that building, the third tower building, collapsed. Pretty much what looks like a controlled demolition, as easily as if not as easily, easier than the two main buildings. So I don't know what are your Josh? There's a history behind that though, right? There's Rumsfeld and that he went before Congress, and can you just give a brief explanation of like kind of what's leading up to that?
Well, I don't know if people remember Enron, which was a giant scandal that was happening, and Building 7 was actually home of the SEC, Security and Exchange Commission, which actually was investigating Enron and all of these other insider trading events. And the police officers and the firefighters themselves said, we found no cabinets, no filing cabinets. We found no computers, no nothing. Everything was vaporized. They found none of that kind of stuff. So all that information that was going on in these investigations was completely vaporized in Building 7, which wasn't even mentioned in the 9/11 Commission, going back to their conspiracy theory, right? Like 9/11 Commission doesn't even mention Building 7 at all until people were finally pointing at it saying, hey, what's going on here? Like that building completely collapsed that day too. And then NIST, they showed in that video we were watching earlier, National Institute of Standards and Technology, they said, well, we'll provide a model of how that building collapsed. And it completely like the way that they show it is completely different than what you're seeing with your own eyes, how that shit collapsed.
This is a interview of Larry Silverstein talking about pulling Building 7.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Pull it.
You heard it there, folks.
Wait, what?
He said to pull that shit.
Come again, Larry?
He said it as clear as day.
Well, apologists try to say that he meant pull it, like pull the people out of the building that were in there.
In what context?
The context has nothing to do with that. No, he talks about his immediate sentence after is, and we watched the building collapse. Like what?
Well, we were talking about, we call him Lucky Larry because he was lucky with his insurance policy, and he was also lucky because he used to have breakfast every morning at the restaurants at the top of the World Trade Center called the Windows of the World, and he would have breakfast there every single morning. You'll never guess which date he didn't go and have breakfast that morning. His wife allegedly made a dermatology appointment for him, and he happened to miss breakfast that one day. So Lucky Larry got away with his life, and he got away with insurance policy too.
We gotta figure out a way to bottle that up. Bottle that luck up. Give me some of that.
Yeah, I need that Lucky Larry juice.
Hey, yo.
Yo.
Okay. Yeah. The Rumsfeld thing. You know, I think what it was like a trilly. Was it a trilly that the Pentagon budget had missing? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I think it's $1.2 trillion missing from the Pentagon budget. This happens all the time, like they do audits and they can't, oh, where did it go? And even right now in Ukraine, right? They have no idea where the money's going. They don't know where the weapons are going. I mean, I'm on CNN. I'm not like, I didn't get this from like Josh's rightwingfacts.com. It's like, you look it up on fucking CNN and they say, oh, we have no idea where the weapons are that we sent over to them. So they could be in the hands of somebody else, even more dangerous than Ukraine or whatever the fuck it is,
Yeah. They were hiding that antimatter sky missile money. That's what they were doing. You didn't want to tell them about that. That truly they spent on that. So, all right. We've gone through a lot here, and for anybody out there, I mean, I'm sure the people watching this are going to be familiar with a lot of these theories. So if you have more information to provide, anybody listening, watching out there, definitely drop it in the comments. We'd love to, any videos you got, anything. We definitely would love to see those comments and anything that we've been talking about. If there's some other detail that maybe we missed, or because there's so much.
You have that Russian video, bro, of that Russian engineer, buddy. Listen, I may just line your pockets, bro, at this point, because I'm really trying to see this video again. Like,
you're gonna do a bounty,
bro. I almost feel. I swear to God, I can't find it. It makes me feel like I'm retarded. Like it never actually happened.
Hey, what is it again? You said a Russian engineer.
He's on like a talk show explaining it, like a late night show, and he's explaining how this, whatever it is, antimatter or nuke or something, and I'm pretty sure it's antimatter. And he's explaining it, and he shows like the scientific evidence. He shows blueprints. He shows in the blueprint, like the official blueprint, where it is. And then he shows that after 9/11, you can't pull this blueprint anymore with this piece in it, that it's not showing that anymore on the blueprint.
Okay. I'll propose a bounty. Anybody out there, or Deezy, maybe Deezy finds it. Anybody who finds that and can post it in the comments. We got a little scratch we can throw Deezy's way. We're not slave labor here, okay? We'll throw. I'll throw you a bonus, Deezy, if you find it. If not, whoever out there finds it, we'll figure out something. We'll do something nice. So, okay, conspiracies, all this kind of stuff. It's always challenging because at the end of the day, it's who knows what we're going to find out, and it's been going on, and they're great at obfuscating things, and whatever. So I think. For me personally, I love all the conspiracy stuff and trying to understand what happened. And I definitely think what the official story is not the case. I think that's pretty obvious. But I think what I think about with 9/11 when this time of the year rolls around every year is I think about the legacy of this event. Because more than anything, I feel like the modern world, the world we live in, everything that is going on, whether it's like social issue, division, or all this stuff, I really feel like so much of it you can trace back if you walk the steps back to 9/11. And so I think the biggest thing in my mind would be the decade afterward that was pretty much, I'd say 2 decades. We just left Afghanistan and unceremoniously. But I think the war on terror by far is the greatest legacy of 9/11. And as part of the war on terror, I think the funding of that war and the geopolitical implications of that war have led to a lot of what we're experiencing now in the United States and around the world. So I'm just kind of curious, maybe Josh, what is your impression of post 9/11, the war on terror, and how that unfolded? Do you feel like 9/11, if it was done purposefully, or even not purposefully, let's just say let's say the bonehead, the bonehead 9/11 commission report is 100% true. Do you feel like it was taken advantage of so that we could then implement a neocon imperialist foreign policy in the Middle East?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, one thing we need to understand is that that set the precedent for everything that has happened this century. Project for a New American Century. Like that is what we are currently living under. That is the catalyst behind literally everything that we're dealing with today. And we're not even allowed to have a conversation about it. It's so taboo and people feel so uncomfortable talking about it. And when you do talk about it, they say, "Oh, you're not respecting the victims," or they'll try to paint it in some kind of moral light. Whereas they themselves lied directly about the events of that day. They had knowledge that it was going to happen. Even George W. Bush had a memo on his desk from August 9th saying bin Laden determined to strike in the United States. Even bin Laden's implication inside of that. Bin Laden denied it himself on CNN.com. You can look it up. It says this was perpetrated by people for personal reasons. I had nothing to do with it. And then the New York Times said that bin Laden died in December 26, 2001 in the New York Times. And they cited a Pakistani obituary saying that he died in 2001. And the prime minister of not only Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, and also the prime minister of Pakistan said that he's dead. Oliver North said he's dead. 2001, 2002. They all said that he is dead and was not implicated in 9/11. And then I was just talking to somebody about this the other day about the lack of evidence of his death in 2009 when
When they threw him overboard from the like after they caught him or whatever, caught him, killed him, and threw him into the water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no evidence of that. So with Saddam Hussein, we can see him being hanged the day after Christmas on TV or live leak or wherever else you're going to find on the internet. Uh, Muammar Gaddafi, they found him in a storm drain, and the people dragged him out and bayoneted him in his butthole with a knife. They can show that on live leak and on the internet. Literally no evidence of Osama bin Laden being killed in Abbottabad, Pakistan. And they say, oh, well, they confirmed it was him through facial recognition, yet no pictures of him and the facial recognition. They say, oh, they confirmed it was him because they had a soldier lay next to his body and confirmed that it was because Osama bin Laden was tall. They confirmed it was him because they laid next to him and showed the height, and it was him. And then there's no evidence of that, no pictures of that. So they try to implicate these alleged hijackers who had a case of stolen identity, and the BBC says this, and they tried to link bin Laden with Saddam Hussein. So they tried to get the 2-for-1. They invaded Afghanistan and they invaded Iraq. How many millions of innocent people died during those wars? You know, how many trillions of dollars was spent to keep those wars ongoing? It's money laundering, basically, just like the same way they're doing in Ukraine. So they orchestrate an event like this to happen, and then they justify it by saying, "Oh, we're going to invade these countries, pay the weapons contractors, and pay all of the people who are involved in this. They get their money. They don't care if they win or lose in Afghanistan or Iraq. They don't care about how many people they kill, how many people die, and any of the soldiers that die over there. They can just wave them around as martyrs and say, "Oh, well, we'll remember this, and we have another person to kind of put up as a martyr and justify what we did over there. And don't you dare talk about these events because you're being disrespectful to the soldiers and their families and stuff like that." So it's a constant like bait and switch at everything that they do, and they get away with corruption. They keep doing it over and over again.
And a lot of that, my understanding is in Europe currently, there's a lot of talk of immigration for the Middle East and all that kind of stuff, which I don't want to get into, but a lot of that comes from the destabilization that occurred from us us waging war in the Middle East during this time period. Is that accurate?
Yeah, of course, but why Europe? Why do they have to go to Europe?
Right. True.
Why isn't China taking immigrants? Why isn't India taking immigrants? Why doesn't Saudi Arabia take in immigrants? Why do they have to come to Europe?
I mean, I think it's an operation. Just bringing it back. I would say the war on terror was a big one. Part of the war on terror was the Patriot Act and the sacrifice of our liberties. And like you talked about earlier, Fresh, the level, it's for anyone who's young, the police state idea. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, we're going to have a police state under Kamala and all that." And maybe, I'm not saying no, but I'm saying it was palpable. There was people were it was mass mind psychosis after 9/11.
Yeah, everyone was so scared they didn't care. They're like, absolutely, I'll go through all the hoops. I'll do whatever you need me to do. Just keep me safe, right? And look at what it's got us. Look at what it's got us. Super surveillance. We're basically not like you're not allowed to move freely at all.
Well, the Patriot Act was initially set up, as I said, we're surveilling metadata of these emails that are going back and forth just from the terrorists. So basically, they're saying like, oh well, like the terrorists will send a picture to somebody, but they'll hide a secret message in there, and so we're just going through the metadata and trying to figure out what they're covertly sending back and forth. And then Edward Snowden comes along, and they're like, oh no, we're looking at all your emails and your dick pics and everything else that you guys are sending on the internet. So
Hey, titty pics, all right? I'm looking at titty pics, Josh, all right? Just to be clear, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, like, but they're looking at literally everything that you're sending back and forth with all these people, everything, all your text messages, everything. And people say, "Oh, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I have nothing to fear." But that only applies until they change what they consider wrong. Now it's like, oh, like imagine if Trump or Kamala, it doesn't matter who, but like your political opposition gets into power and they say, oh, what did you go to a Trump website? Oh, well, we're considering you a terrorist now, and that you'll get in trouble for that. You give that power to them. Yeah, you give that power to them, and you don't know what kind of psychopath down the line is going to use that power to justify anything.
It always escalates. I mean, that's the nature of government. It'll always, it's like the income tax or whatever, it's just supposed to be a small group of rich people, and it always ends up going to everybody. And I would say before 9/11, if somebody had been like, okay, we're going to do all these gross overreaches and constitutional violations, which are still in effect today. But if someone had tried to say that, everybody would have been like, why? And all the civil liberties groups would have been that were legit back then, that have now been compromised, but they would have all been like, this is a gross overreach and all this stuff. But once 9/11 happened, I remember going to the airport in Boston and protesting the Patriot Act and the overreach of it, and nobody wanted to hear it. Everybody was like, oh, so you just want to let terrorists run amok? You just want to let terrorists do whatever they want? And I still feel like even now today, I mean, we just had, what's his name? Pavel was just arrested in France for, whatever, Telegram, not supposedly, not, he says he does, but supposedly not providing information to the government about X, Y, and Z activity. And that is now used for everything. That excuse, the terrorists, Islamic terrorists, it's used for fucking everything for them to just take down, to take down anybody who has dissent towards any view that is not in line with the government. And I would say that's probably maybe that's the biggest legacy of 9/11. Just that attitude. That attitude did not exist before 9/11. It may have existed in the government or the FBI or ATF or whatever, but in terms of the general attitude of the people, that didn't exist. And I still think that that's probably the biggest legacy of the whole thing. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Remember, Ronald Reagan said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
It's the paternalistic view of the government, right? Like something bad happens, they run to daddy government to come and save them and protect them and do all these other things, when it was the government who was asleep at the wheel in the first place. I mean, regardless of whether you want to say,
or did it?
Yeah, is it negligence or is it done on purpose? I mean, maybe it's both.
I mean, Wesley Clark, right? Wesley Clark was like straight up afterward. He was saying, we're going to go. He said that they were all talking about taking over all the countries that we're now trying to take over, except for Ukraine. They forgot about Ukraine back then.
Yeah, well, what's crazy in that interview he did on Democracy Now! Is that he says like, oh yeah, I was coming in to bring in all of the information on 9/11 and Afghanistan, and he goes, oh, we're going to invade Iraq, and he goes, Iraq? Like what? Like he was Wesley Clark was confused on like, oh, why are we invading Iraq? Like, what did they have? Did they find some new information or something like that? It's like, no, we're just using this opportunity just to, because George W. Bush had a green light. People don't remember he had like some crazy, like a 97% approval rate or something super high in the 90s, which is unheard of for any president ever.
Okay, so I got to get on my high horse here. You got all these motherfuckers out here talking about how Trump, MAGA, dictator, it's the end of the world, all this stuff. Okay, even the people that were in that administration, Cheney's now supporting Kamala or whatever. These evil bastards are saying all this crap about this. It's like we had that. After 9/11, George W. Bush could do whatever. I think he was the true dictator of America during that time. I don't think we've ever had a bigger dictator in the United States. He had everybody. He had the army. He had everybody in the military. He had all of the majority of the American population. Nobody after 9/11 wanted to had. If you even were like, what about these Middle Easterners and blah blah blah, and this, nobody wanted an intellectual conversation. We were like, who do we fuck up? Let's do it now. Here's all the money. Go do it.
Well, it's the Cat Williams thing, right? Cat Williams said, he's like, America's some gangsters. We're just sitting there like, say my name, bitch. Say my name 3 times. See if I don't come over there and kill every last one of you.
Yeah, well, people forget. I mean, I don't know if they forget, but like Barack Obama ran on hope and change. Why did people want hope and change at that point? Because the Bush administration was so disastrous. They had the highest approval rating and then the lowest approval rating after everything that they had done. In 2005, it was known that Saddam Hussein did not have weapons of mass destruction. It was a fact. It was confirmed. And every weapon that they had were old weapons that America had given them during the Iran-Iraq war. So, so people, like 75% of the population believed that Saddam Hussein had some hand in 9/11. He was not involved in that whatsoever, and there was no Al Qaeda in Iraq until after 9/11. So, but they use that as an excuse just because people are so paranoid and they're so scared that they say, "Oh, I had the green light now. I can do whatever I want." So instead of using that green light to say, "Oh my God, like we were attacked. That was so terrible. Now is the time for healing more than ever because we need to bring the world together because we're more angry at each other than ever." Dude, people in all around the world were having candlelit visuals for 9/11 around the world. Everybody, it shook the whole world. And here in America, and then like Democrats and Republicans were on the steps of the Capitol singing "God Bless America" and stuff like that. People were coming together. Even after the time, everyone around, like you were dealing with, was all kind of quiet and solemn and like working with each other and like coming together. Like there was more racial harmony. There was like all this stuff, and that stuff was just completely obliterated by those wars.
Because I remember being in Boston. There was a little bit of like, if you were brown, there was a couple of dumbasses who were like, starting some shit. But there were way more people who were, especially with the people I was hanging out with, who were like, they were really adamant about being like, no, it's not, brown people, whatever. There was a beautiful moment after 9/11 that was a real unity moment in terms of human spirit, and a better government leader, whatever, would have taken that opportunity to like really do some good things. And no, wasted all that shit, all that capital of goodwill and unity on just the worst, most atrocities you can imagine, and basically bankrupting us. I mean, all this stuff led to 2008 and the financial collapse. So, I mean,
Well, Bush ran as a non-interventionist candidate in 2000. He's like, "Oh, we don't need to be meddling in these other countries and nation building and doing all these other things." He said that, and a lot of people believe that he genuinely believed that, but it was those crazy neocons he surrounded himself with, Dick Cheney and all these other assholes like Rumsfeld, who were just looking for a war that they love. Like same with John McCain. Like all these people are just like, who can we bomb next, and who can we get rich off of with the weapons contracts and stuff like that. So we had an opportunity to heal the world, and then instead they destroyed it. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, the fact that any of those guys were able to live out a long life, like they current, and some of them still are, like Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney's on his 4th heart. He's had like 4 heart transplants or something like that, dude.
Die, motherfucker! Just fucking die. You deserve it.
Because his heart's so black.
Die and go to fucking hell.
The devil's calling, brother. Pick up. Fuck. Like, it's crazy. And again, like him supporting Kamala to me is par for the course. And everybody should kind of see that this whole thing that like a lot of like centrist or whatever people say, the left and the right, it's two wings on the same bird, right? Those wings are coming together to try to take down the anti-authority motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of how you feel about it, it's got to feel a little weird when Cheney's moving over. You got to see that maybe this guy's not part of their club.
He wants to see one more war before he dies.
Yeah, totally. No, they say we have a dumb party and an evil party, and every once in a while they get together and do something dumb and evil. You know?
I mean, my biggest, just selfishly, my biggest thing is flight sucks now. Air travel freaking sucks now because of 9/11. They won. Okay, they won. The terrorists won, people. Don't get mad at me for saying that, because guess what? Every American, what do we got to do? Every normal American doesn't have private flight because you're not an elite and you want to fly anywhere in the world or the country. What do you got to do? The whole gauntlet of getting either felt up or shot with cancer rays or whatever. Take your damn shoes off. All that bullshit that we got to do now is because of 9/11. That's what, if you're wondering how you're losing from 9/11, I'm just saying, if you're wondering how you're losing,
Yeah, because the terrorists, aka the government, took all your fucking rights.
I don't take the rights, take the money, inflate the currency. I just want to fly somewhere without having to go through stupid security or paying extra to do the quick thing. All right.
Like I was saying earlier, the same way we could walk across the border is how we could fly to the States. Like, you pull up and you're like, yeah, I'm going to New York. And they're like, oh, okay, you're from Canada and you're going to New York. All right, here's a ticket. Like, you don't have to put your name on the ticket. You just, here's a seat. There's a seat in the airplane.
Terrorists won, bro.
Yeah, the government terrorists did win.
Now it's the South Park TSA where it's like, all right, sir, I'm gonna check your asshole. Asshole clear.
I know. At least give me a prostate exam while I'm there, so that way it's two birds, one stone. You know.
At least buy me dinner before you fuck me.
Yeah, totally.
There's a way to do it, But that said though, I think in terms of the future, there are two things. One gives me hope and one worries me a lot. Okay. The first thing, I'll do the bad news first. The bad news is people like my nephew, who are, he's junior in college now. This is a generation, he was born in 2003. This is a generation of, I guess they're not kids, but a generation of young adults that have grown up in a world caused by 9/11 in which there is no chill.
Yeah, they don't know peace.
They don't know peace.
Or freedom. Or freedom.
And I feel like that has created a new generation of high anxiety that maybe I don't even think we really understand it yet. Because people go, oh, these Gen Zs are, this and that, and they're so sensitive and they're so paranoid and they have all this depression issues and all that kind of stuff. And the first thing I'll say, I mean, it's shown with actual, studies and evidence that that's the case. But on the same time, though, and this is where the hope comes back in. I do think that there are a lot of Gen Zs who want the world that we knew. The pre-September 11th world is something that they desire, whether they know it or not. And I know that because, we just interviewed my brother from See You Soon, and I was part of that. And when I was in New York, I met a lot of people that were Gen Z, and I never really hung out with people who were truly Gen Z other than my nephew. And even then, nephew, family, whatever. And a lot of what they talk about and what they desire is they desire a world in which they are not watched. Whether it's their parents, whether it's the government, whether it's social media, that they want to have these authentic, spontaneous life experiences, the kind that you see in Stranger Things when they're riding their bikes and hanging out, that there's a real desire for a genuine connection, because the world is increasingly becoming more of an artificial surveillance state. So I do have some optimism there, but I guess what I'm zooming out on here is the legacy of 9/11 maybe the one positive legacy? Is it that we now have opened our eyes? before 9/11, maybe we were asleep. Maybe our eyes were closed. Maybe all the stuff that was happening, and if you're more in the conspiratorial bent, sort of the underlying fracturing of society, we were blind to that. And 9/11, for all of its shittiness, now that we're arriving, we've kind of, 9/11 truth, like the idea of waking up and seeing the world for what it really is and not this illusion that's been created, especially in the United States. Is that a positive legacy of what 9/11 is about? And I cite the Ron Paul movement, Tea Party, MAGA, movements on the actual real left, not the fake corporate left. I mean, I don't know. Is that a positive benefit that it was probably the event that sort of woke up a lot of people, and and if you believe in accelerationism, the idea that we're now accelerating towards a society in which we're seeing through the bullshit, and maybe that's going to lead to a better world. What do you guys think? Maybe Fresh, you're shaking your head. What do you think?
Absolutely not. So I think that at the time, just like any time, there are people that are after the truth. I think that the internet itself would accelerate that. I don't think that that has anything to do with whatever. And I think that, again, people always had a distrust for the government, but I don't think the government was ever as bad as they were then. So I don't think we had what we had to, like, I don't think we had to wake up to as much until these motherfuckers did this shit. You know what I mean? Like, things were bad and people were fighting wars we might not have understood. Sure. But not at this level where you're taking out your own people. You know what I'm trying to say? So I think that maybe if I feel like maybe there were people that were already awake, and I don't think that the event necessarily matters. I think that we likely, if we had the invention of the internet is the thing that caused this like accelerationism or whatever.
I think 2020 and COVID did more to like shatter the paradigm for a lot of people. I think they became a lot more skeptical of so-called professionals and the medical establishment and all these other things. And I saw a lot of people compare the two. They compared the COVID psyop to 9/11 psyop, just as where everybody was like, no, you got to be patriotic and get in line and do what we say. Same thing happened with COVID. So you got to get in line and do what we say. And people started to question and say, hey, hang on, wait a minute. What you're telling me isn't the full truth. You're withholding information or you're telling me things that I don't necessarily believe. And there's been a ripple effect from that. And I guess just to make it kind of like to white pill everybody a little bit, because like you said, on September 10th, 2001, life was one way. And then the next day, like that changed overnight. Same thing happened with the Berlin Wall, right? Up until that week of the Berlin Wall, people thought the Soviet Union is going to be around for another 300 years. Like they're like, there's no ending of the Soviet Union. They're going to be a challenger to America forever. And all of a sudden, one day, the Berlin Wall just came down, and everybody just dropped communism, and they adopted free markets in the 90s. So that can happen. It can happen the other way. Like things can change overnight. It just depends on the will of the people. Like how fed up are they, and how willingly are they to like question the narratives that we're told. And so 9/11 is it's a big one. Yeah.
I have friends that didn't believe 9/11 was an inside job. Then COVID happened, and now they've dove into everything, and they're right here like, bro, 9/11 was an inside job. There's no way Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're all the way in it now, right? So I agree. I think that COVID was the catalyst as far as like the wake up, where before COVID, people fought the 9/11 thing like crazy. Like people were like, no, it happened how they're saying it. How fucking dare you? People died. Don't speak on that. And then COVID happened. And now we discuss everything because they fucking lied to us, right? So I guess people saw it.
Kind of circling back to like what Ravine was saying is like it's insane that like those young people they do live in a state of paranoia. They live in a state of constant like there's lack of privacy. There's zero privacy. They know that anything they do at school is going to be recorded and put on Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and all these other platforms that they use. So they're hyper aware of like I'm being watched constantly. Anything I do or say can be taken out of context, and I can be ruined and embarrassed and all these other things. To where they have anxiety about anything they do or say, and they're like, oh no, like I might do this the wrong thing or whatever it is. I can get in trouble for whatever it is. And that, like, we didn't grow up in a world like that. We grew up before the internet. We're the last generation to know what it's like before the internet and stuff like that. So we still have this kind of freedom about us. We're like, oh no, I'll say this, I'll do this, I'll think this. So it really is a paradigm shift.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, Deezy, what do you think about all this? Do you feel like we're going to see greener pastures in the near future with all of us waking up to the truth, or do we got a ways to go?
Unfortunately, unless we actually get a mass dissemination of information and we get the full truths out there for everybody to see, which I think we are close to. Honestly, we're in the information age, and that's what this war that we're currently in, World War III, people don't realize it, but we're already there, and it's information that is the beginning of this war. And when the truth comes out, because it will, everything that happens in dark will come to light. That's when we'll see the awakening that I think you're talking about. And I think we're at the tip of the iceberg right now, but there's still an overwhelming number of people who will refuse to look at the facts of a lot of different things. So we're there and we're close, but we need to get like everybody to take a fat dose of acid or something so that they can fucking lose their ego and
Everybody take some DMT. This is not health advice.
and I don't know if it's like ignorance and it's blissful to not have to think about the fact that our governments are actively out to get the citizens, and people don't want to believe that. I don't know if it's just the ignorance and they're living their life and it doesn't affect them until it does, or they just absolutely refuse to believe that bad people can exist in authoritative positions, which I really think most of it's got to be ignorance. Like they don't realize the world that people could be that bad, or
people are willfully ignorant because it's easier to wake up every day, go to work, and just worry about your bills and your life and what's going on in your ecosystem. Because when you start looking at it outside, then yeah, you know what I mean? It starts adding more stress. And
I would say I agree with you guys, ignorance, but I would say it's innocence. People don't want to believe that these people that are in charge or whatever, they don't want to believe, especially with boomers, for sure. With boomers, they do not want to believe that it's evil that they're saying. They will chalk it up to, shoot, we made some bad decisions, or oh man, maybe we didn't make, maybe they'll talk it to everything else, but they just will not believe. Like, no, there are people in power who are sociopathic, power mad, insane people. And the things that used to stop them from really getting to levels of insanity that we could never imagine, those stops have been removed by things like 9/11, right? And they just haven't arrived at the understanding of like, no, like these people are like sociopathic, villainous criminal minds that are at play, that care about nothing and have no allegiance to anything or any principles, and are purely operating as might is right, savages basically. And I think that innocence is being, I think it's going way fast. So I do think that there is an acceleration of that idea that like, no, it's not just people with good intentions that are making bad decisions. No, these people are truly evil and they have full intent to do what they're doing. So, but I agree with you guys. There's still an ignorance. I'll still share stuff with friends who are, not of the same viewpoint. And, you'll see the willful ignorance. They don't want to entertain the idea, until it's forced upon them, and then they have to. And I think that's the mistake of COVID. They forced it on everybody, and a certain number of people wake up to that. And I think I guess here's a question. Is there anything that the government could do now that everybody would fall in line with, like they did with 9/11 or the beginning of COVID? Or not, I mean, I would say COVID, there are a lot of people who didn't fall in line in the beginning, but 9/11, is there anything that could aliens, they could do Project Bluebeam? Would anybody be like, okay, we must now serve the aliens, or is it done now?
there's definitely going to be those groups of people, but I think that we're so desensitized to the idea of like aliens or like the thing that's crazy about 9/11. If we're going to pull up something good about it, is the following 9/11, the United States was probably like the most united it has ever been. People were flying American flags. You know, people were like, the neighborly spirit came back for a time, and people felt like, oh shit, like we were attacked. Like every American took it personally that 9/11 happened, and that since has disseminated. So now we don't have any of that, but we still have all of the fucking laws and shit that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and now we just hate each other. So it's like there was something good that came from the tragedy, not necessarily like it should have happened, but that was the only good thing that I saw come from 9/11. You know, people were united in a common feeling.
But so the silver lining was something that went away.
Yes.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of people forget. George Orwell did War of the Worlds back in the day on the radio, and he tricked everybody into really believing that an alien force was coming into New York, and it scared all the people. So it is possible to have some type of like mass psychosis event where you say, "Oh, that Project Bluebeam, there are aliens coming." There was that movie about an asteroid coming to Earth like a couple years ago.
It's called Don't Look Up. It's a great movie.
And it's sort of the same concept, though. It's like if there was an asteroid coming and the government said that there was, like, would we believe them? Like, basically, they shattered their trustworthiness. So even if there was, see, the problem with The Boy Who Cried Wolf is that there eventually was a wolf. So when there is the wolf, we're not going to be so willing to believe them, and then we all die or something like that. We all perish when there actually is a real threat.
And that could be the alien thing, right? Because they did just say like, "Hey, they're kind of real, bro." So, and I feel like at that point when they said that, a lot of conspiracy theories went, "Nope." The government said it's real, it's demons. You know what I mean? Like they're not. A lot of people have that type of distrust for like the 9/11 conspiracy theorists, where like the original 9/11 conspiracy theorists, COVID did something else to them. You know what I mean? Like COVID made a lot of conspiracy theorists go off the deep end.
That was me.
Oh, me too, for real. Yeah, for sure.
I quit my job. I fucking told my wife, I told my mom, all my family, like, don't get any shots. Don't even go see a doctor. If you get sick, you know, take vitamins, go get some sunlight, you'll be fine. And then from there on, everything that happened was always under a watchful eye. Every single thing that happens from any person in any kind of position of power, I'm like, and since that point, I believe in no coincidences. There's no, there is no, if this person knows this person and they're connected by a mutual interest, it's not a coincidence, it's purposeful. And that's what it turned me into. So now when I see, oh, this person has ties to this company and they're doing this, I'm like, oh, that's not on accident.
It's more like that makes sense.
Like let's say like Arbusto Energy, where George W. Bush and Salman bin Laden were business partners in an oil company. Yeah, maybe something like that.
You mean Tim Osman?
Oh, Tim Osman, the CIA asset of Al Qaeda, which means the base, as in the CIA database of Operation Cyclone, where the U.S. government was funding the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. Oh, maybe some interest like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like $3.4 billion was given, I think, or something to them in order for them to fight the Russians during that they were trying to, because the Russia invaded and they were trying to fight off the Russians. So then the CIA and FBI just funded the local militia group, which ended up being our enemies in the future. So it's like, huh?
Oh man! All right. Well, listen, I want to propose one last toast, and then we'll do a little pick your poison, and then we'll probably close it out here. I do want to raise a glass to truth. I think the original truthy thing came from 9/11. And if that's the greatest legacy it has, then by all means, cheers to being agents of truth.
I just think it's wild that people think calling somebody a truther is an insult.
At least I'm not a liar.
Yeah. you are always in pursuit of the truth. How dare you?
What are you doing? What are you reading over there?
Right.
What are you reading?
Fucking Browner?
What are you reading about stuff?
What are you learning?
Yeah, what are you over there learning with your books and your websites?
And your fucking glasses there, bud? You got
videos?
a paper and pen too?
Yeah. Truther. You're trying to find the truth?
Trying to find the truther? That's fucking hilarious.
Kinda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kinda. I mean, listen, I spend my whole life in pursuit of the truth. I mean, so call me what you will. I don't know. Just don't call me late for dinner.
I wear it like a badge. Proud to be a truther. Well, we're going to test your truthfulness, Josh, right now before we close out here. So we have this game. If anybody hasn't seen the show before, it's called Pick Your Poison. I'm trying to get them as a sponsor, but I don't think they know we exist yet. So, but anyway, Pick Your Poison, and Josh, this game, all it is I'm going to give you two options. You got to pick which one you would do. You have two different options, Josh. You tell us. You pick your poison. Which one do you want to do? The first option is get scalded on your inner thigh with a branding iron, as if you were in Nexium. It doesn't say that, but that's what would be the idea. Let me see.
Joke's on you. I'm into that shit.
Okay, well, maybe it's an easy choice then. So get scalded on your inner thigh. So you got to walk around for a little while with that crusty scalding, and that pain. Okay, and then the other option is only be attracted to people who strongly oppose your political views.
Oh God.
Only be attracted to people who strongly oppose your political views. Commonwealth supporters, I would assume, would fall into that. Maybe super Christian, evangelical neocons might fall into that. So which one? Would you rather get a brand from some kind of Nexium cult on your inner thigh that you're going to have to walk around with, or would you only be attracted to people who strongly oppose your political views?
Well, isn't that like all of modern dating is like that, right? Like everybody's sort of like that. But I mean, well, okay, if I can be attracted to them, does that mean that I can still convert them? So I guess that would be like my.
Oh, interesting question. They're attractive. Yeah, they're attractive. They're hot, but they will not ever convert, and you will not like it if they convert. It's just a curse that has been laid upon you. Which one would you pick?
The burn is temporary, like it'll hurt for like a while, maybe like a week after, but you'll heal from that. There's no healing the heart from like.
It also doesn't say who's branding you, so maybe it's a hot babe, and like, you know what I mean. So you can.
Bro, listen, I'll let you put USDA Prime right here on this leg. I'm not doing no fucking Jesus Christ. I'm not dating the left.
Come on, guys. We can't make peace with people who have different opinions than us. We can't live with that if they're hot, especially if they're hot.
Yes, listen, I'm peaceful, brother. I'm peaceful. We can have a barbecue, we can have some drinks. We can not discuss Kamala if you want. Right? We can shake hands, we can laugh, ha 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 ha. But I can't marry you because I mean, that's crazy. Or I can't date you.
Well, it's saying you can only be attracted. It's saying anybody who has your beliefs, you'll be impotent. You won't even feel nothing in that department. That's what it's saying. Only people who oppose you.
Hey, oh nah. You see what I'm saying? That's crazy. Like, listen, I actually think that you have to agree on most things when it comes to morals, right? And I think that my beliefs don't align with that, like, you know what I mean? My morals are aligned with my beliefs. It's impossible. It's impossible. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Well, I would say I was going to say this, Josh. We were talking to my brother. L.A., where I met you and I lived for many years. L.A. made me realize that in a way, behavior matters more than values, because there's a lot of cutthroat, more capitalists than me types in LA. But if you ask them what their political views will be, they would give you all this garbage about progressivism, even though personally I know that they don't behave that way. So I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things where I could be with somebody, and if they behave a certain way, I don't care what their ideas are. I'm just like,
Well, how many corporations support libertarians and support Ron Paul? None. You know, like if the free market like allowed for all these big greedy capitalist people to gain all this money, they would all be libertarians, right? But practically none of them are. They're all progressives and everything else. And also shout out to your brother, like he's the fucking man. I listened to that whole episode. He's like, yeah, he's a really awesome dude. I didn't know he's Green Beret and all that. Like I knew he was in the military, but nah, he was a really impressive guy, man. Like I really enjoyed that episode. That was tight.
I'll let him know. I mean, and him, and obviously, I'm not gonna say her name or whatever, but my sister-in-law and all that, and they always see you, regard you very highly. I'm definitely gonna send them this episode because I know they'll want to watch it. So, yeah. Well, listen, man. With that said, first of all, thank you, Josh, for coming on the show.
Well, hang on. Are we gonna have a closing? Are we gonna have a final thought like Jerry Springer?
Sure. What's your final thought, man? We can go round robin here.
Okay, cool. Like just real quick, because we started off talking about the victims of 9/11 and stuff like that, and I just wanted to point out this woman. Her name was Beverly Eckert, and she kind of led the charge for the 9/11 victims, the families, and she was outspoken about wanting an investigation of 9/11, and they tried to pay her off and tried to give her a big payoff and say, hey, like if you be quiet, like we'll give you this big chunk of money so you'll go away. And she said, I'm not going away. And she met up with Barack Obama and said, hey, like I really want to talk about this. This is very serious. Like I want an investigation, a serious investigation of 9/11, find out what happened to my husband. And I think a month later, she died in a plane crash. And so she was leading the charge against that, and she became a victim herself. So for all the people who say like, oh, you're being insensitive about the victims and stuff like that, no, the victims want an investigation of 9/11. And I think that's important to remember, that the firefighters have questions, engineers have questions, the families, they all have questions. So it's important that we keep talking about this topic, even though it's been 2 decades and stuff. It's still relevant today. So I just want to
Absolutely.
make sure I said that. Yeah.
You know what? Toast to her
Yeah.
and everything
R.I.P.
that she ended up
R.I.P.
sacrificing. So RIP. 100% right, man. I'm glad you said that. Anybody else have any final thoughts on 9/11 that they'd like to say before we close it on out here?
I think that's beautiful, bro. I think that's it, man. I don't think that anything else could make it any better.
Yeah. Well, listen. First of all, anybody listening out there, thank you for listening to this show, watching the show. If you're still here, Josh, before we go out, where can people find your work? Where can they learn more about you? I know you're on Drip. We got you on that Drip. We need to get you some more subscribers on there, but tell the people where they can find more of your work.
Yeah, Drip too hard. Yeah, JoshuaClements.com. Everything at Joshua Clements. Instagram, Twitter, everything. Hit me up. You got questions about 9/11? Shoot me a DM. Hit me up. No feds. No feds. No feds.
No feds. Feds are not allowed. Not allowed. We'll put all the stuff in the description for the episode, so you guys can get all the information. Josh is an amazing designer, and you should definitely, if you haven't checked out Drip yet, people out there, check out Josh is on Drip. We're on Drip. The links are in the description. They're about to put out their new app, which I think is going to be a total game changer, because you don't have to have a Solana wallet or anything. You still use Drip. So take a look at them, drip.haus, drip.haus. I think that they're gonna do, it's gonna be special. I think it's gonna be a huge deal once this app's out. So check us both out there. And if you enjoyed the conversation today, like, subscribe, comment. If you hated the conversation, if you're a normie 9/11 trust the narrative from the government person, we will still want to hear from you, and we're still happy you're watching the show. All right, so just get in there. But here's what you need to do. All right, don't be lazy. Don't be a lazy ass and be like, oh, that's not what really happened. All right, well then
Present your best evidence.
present your evidence.
Prove it. Receipts or it didn't happen, bitch.
Right? Hey, if you're on X, we're now going to post the episodes on X in full. Get in there and write your thesis, multiple threads, whatever. We're for it. All right. We care about truth. So if you feel like we're in the wrong, if you do not believe in antimatter space laser technologies that exist.
Hey, yo, be careful with that one.
I didn't say nothing.
Yeah, I know. You know what? Fine. I'm going to have to cut you off. If you love this, like, subscribe, follow, hit the bell, send it to your mom, send it to your aunt. And from the bottom of my nuts, fuck you.